This is Grow with the Bros, hosted by Ryan and Ken Parsons, founders of the Brothers at Just Two Gutters. Welcome to another episode of Franchise Friday. We made every mistake in the book so you don't have to. Our time to evolve as business owners is now. Let's grow together. All right, so on today's episodes, we're going to be discussing the technology takeover and what it means for your business. We've got Danny Horbachuck as a guest today. He's one of our New York solutionists. What's up, Danny?
What's going on? I put my pants on today for this.
Are you? Well, we're not going to make you prove it, so we'll see. So basically, we're dealing with a lot of different things right now, and COVID-19 still has most of the country shut down. And as far as technology, we're kind of looking at like, what has this done, and what does this mean for us and for a business, and especially a small business, and in sales. Kind of one of the things that we all hear, and if any of you have watched science fiction movies, since you were a kid, like most of us, every time, like, it's funny, you watch a movie that was made in the 70s, they're like, by the 90s, computers are going to take over the world and flying cars. It's amazing how we're getting closer and closer, and technology is taking over. It just quite hasn't the way we thought. But what have you seen in maybe even our industries? What kind of technology is taking over?
Well, for us, I mean, one of the biggest things is using tablets on appointments and sending estimates via email. That's a big difference over what we're seeing with our competition. A lot of whom are still using paper. They're writing numbers on business cards. They're writing paper receipts out. There's some other companies that seem to be, in the same realm that we're doing, but I don't think anybody's at the level that we're doing it at yet, as far as dealing with the CRMs and stuff like that, like we are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was talking to a buddy recently, and he was in construction robotics, and I'm like, what in the world is that? And they're basically building these machines that could make big buildings. Like, they can lay brick so fast. This thing just goes down the line, and it would just start building it, window openings and all. So we are starting to see, like, in some of the major construction, some big machinery and things and robots that can do some of the work. But what's interesting about that kind of stuff is that, yeah, that might replace some of the workers there, but it also opens up another arm of programming and technology, and you still need people to ship the product, load the product. It can't do all that by themselves. But also, a lot of us have gone remote. Any kind of remote workers, I mean, that's not something that we've thought, most people haven't thought about a lot.
Yeah, we actually started using it when the whole Corona thing hit with sales. It was one of our biggest concerns was how do you still give the same feeling to a client as showing up and talking to them and bonding rapport when you're there? How do you do that remotely? And it's been a learning process for sure, but we seem to have kind of clicked on some things that work. And I think a lot of it's due to the fact that people are willing right now. Had there not been a Corona and we tried to switch to that process, I don't think it would have went over as well. But I think due to the situation where we don't really have a choice, people are a lot more understanding and willing to try to adapt to things like that. And it's been good. Like I said, it's still a learning curve. We're working out details and trying to figure out, how to refine it and make it better. But we've been doing pretty well with it. Yeah,
for sure. So let me think. The other thing that so what I've noticed is it's almost done us a little bit of a favor. For a while, we have combated people that don't want to meet, right? They're just like, whether they don't see the value in meeting, like, can't you just come? It's just gutters. What's the big deal? To people that sincerely, can't or don't want to meet because they work in the city, and by the time they get home, they don't really want to spend time with us. They want to spend time with their family. In some way, I think this helped us. This new program to most people called Zoom. It's now like your mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers, like everybody has, I think, gotten a taste of using this technology. So this has possibly, I think, helped us, go into that, right?
Yeah, it has. I mean, typically a lot of the younger generation are the ones that are like, do I really have to meet? It's just gutters. It's just this, it's just that. And a lot of those people we've been using FaceTime with for a little while anyway. So that whole generation, the younger generation, is more adept at it, and they're more willing to go that route. But a lot of times what we find too is that, especially on a full job like that, myself and Mario as well, especially Mario, you go out there and you do the estimate, you don't meet with somebody, you FaceTime, and then you end up with a next step agreement anyway. It's almost like they're using that first step as kind of qualifying you, before they actually meet with you. So it's still important to stay in communication with them. You can't just email them something, FaceTime them quick, email them, go over and walk away from it. Because a lot of times it still needs that additional step of going out there and meeting with them and discussing exactly what's going to happen. So it's a mix of old and new, from the way I see it.
Do you see that there's going forward for the future? Do you think there's going to be less of a mix of old and new and more of the new?
I think as the younger generation grows and gets older, I think you will see more of the newer style taking over, because that's the way they deal with things. I mean, let's look at the generation in school right now. They're going through learning from home. One of their biggest social interactions has now been taken away. So it's kind of almost training them on how to deal with people remotely. They're handling all their classrooms and everything remotely. So I do think that this whole situation is kind of setting up for a change in the futures as to the way people interact.
Yeah, for sure. Now, how do you, as a salesperson, this is probably the most challenging. People, before this, some people are not wanting to meet. And the whole thing about being in sales and home sales is getting to meet people, to truly go through a sales process, uncover what they need. And I think for the most part, people, even Amazon, has tried to commoditize the service-based industries, at least in construction. We can measure from outer space. We can do a lot from a picture. I think Ken was kind of asking this at the same time, but how do we, what scares you about that? Or what do you want to embrace?
Well, personally, I just like meeting people. I like talking to people face to face, meeting people. So you lose a bit of that. There's, you go to somebody's house and they have a cool car in the driveway, or they have the same type of dog as you. You walk in the house, they have guitars, or they have something that I would find to bond with. That's all been stripped away.
Yeah.
I don't have the option of spotting something on the property or in the house that we have in common. So there is none of that anymore. On the flip side, the appointments that we are seeing right now are, you're not getting any tire kickers right now. Somebody that's maybe thinking about gutters does not want anybody at their house during a time like this. So the leads that you are getting and the people that you are talking to are very serious. So what we're finding is that, if you do spend the right amount of time with them remotely, discussing everything, and you got to be very, very detailed right now in everything. We're detailing the photographs heavily. We're detailing the notes heavily. We're talking to them about all kinds of stuff. So if you can do that, we've been winning on that level. Whereas, a lot of our competition, they're not, they're still doing what they do. Instead of handing them a business card, now they're leaving a message that says, oh, it's just, Joe's Gutters, it's $2,000. Click, so there's, we're still bonding to some level, just not what we would like to.
So do you fear that, let's just say all of a sudden it had to be 100% technology and we're no longer meeting with people. Do you feel that ends up making everything just be about price? Does it just drive it down?
I don't think so. We're still, like you said, we're still winning. We're still out there closing work. We're still hitting numbers. So I think you can still show value in a well done digital estimate. With the photographs, with the notes, with the discussions you do have before building the estimate, you can still build a lot of value there. Something we've always said is, who better not to meet than us? We're our competition. Listen, if our competition was able to go out and meet with the homeowners every time, and we had to do it remotely every time, I'd be a little bit more concerned. But as the playing field is still even, so we're still light years ahead.
You said something huge. Who better to not meet than us? Can you just elaborate on that? Why?
Well, we've been talking about this for a while, and it all started with, one of the solutionists concerned about not being able to, having the no meet or the vegan appointments, as we call them, where you go there and the homeowner won't meet with you or they're not available, and his concern at the time was, I'm not going to close as well if I can't meet the person. And my thought on that was, listen, if they're not going to meet with you, they're not going to meet with your competition either. It's not a priority for them to meet, so they're going to do this across the board. The whole who better not to meet than us goes back to what we talked about earlier, where you have competitors dropping off a business card with a number written in pencil on the back with, ketchup stains on the card, or a piece of paper that's got a coffee stain on it. And, it says a name and a number, and, that's it. Whereas when we still treat that estimate like we do every other estimate, if not more detail. We're drawing on photos. We're sending a digital estimate with all our information, what we're using. It's got our insurance information in it, our contact information in it. It shows pictures of the home. We can even go in detail drawing with a diagram on the photos, rather, where the downspouts are going to go, anything they're going to change. There's just a ton of detail in there. So when the homeowner sits down and they look at 2 pieces of paper and then they look at this printout of a digital estimate with photographs, notes, insurance, that goes back to the who better not to meet than us, and it gives us a ton of weight on our end when the homeowner calls and says, well, so-and-so came in at this price. Well, okay. What was in their estimate? Well, he didn't give me an estimate. He just told me a price. Okay. What size gutter is he using? 6-inch. Are you sure? I think so. Okay. What gauge gutter was it? Is it 0.32? Yeah. Same as yours. Are you sure? I think so. Well, how do you know? Well, I don't know. It leaves a lot of doubt in their mind. So the more stuff like that we can do on our end, it goes back to who better not to meet than us.
Huh. So to sum that up, basically, if everything is equal and we can meet with somebody face to face and our competition can, we have to provide so much value to that experience and knowledge and everything else to outshine them in that scenario. And now if all things are created equal and neither one of us can go, we have to make it the most comprehensive, best possible proposal, and actually try and do that bond and rapport. Because, we know that, it's a fact. People buy from people they like. If there's no opportunity to get them to like us and 2 pieces of paper show up in an email and one says 1,000 and one says 1,500, they're going to go, oh, 1,000, unless we can differentiate, correct?
Yep. The one thing, though, you did say that we have to. I don't look at it as we have to go out and do this. We get to go out and do this. We get to go out and meet them. We get to, and I think that's what kind of separates us is a lot of the competition goes out there with the we have to do this type mentality. And for us, it's more of a we get to show you how great we are because we do the X, Y, and Z. Whereas with a lot of the competition, they're not offering that up. So the homeowner has to chase down answers to their questions where we're offering that up before it even gets asked.
So the future is still uncertain with this whole COVID thing. We do know that New York is shut down till May 15th. Do you feel that people are going to start getting more and more comfortable as this continues, and they're going to start wanting to do more of these Zoom calls and more of these FaceTime calls for the future? Or do you think things are going to get back to the way they were before? Or do you think that this whole thing is a game changer as far as how we're going to be interacting going forward with people?
I think it's going to be split along, again, I think it's going to be split along age lines. I think that the younger generation is just confirming what they've always done. With the older generation, I think the whole Zoom thing, it's kind of neat for them, and they're playing with it, but it's going to be like anything else. MP3s came out and they're still around and it's still going to work and the younger generation uses them, but there's still a lot of people that are going back to records. They enjoy something about it. There's something real about that to them. And I think you're going to see that with these estimates as well. You're going to have people, like I said, Zoom is exciting. It's new for some people because they've never used it. They've never done anything on that type of platform. They're going to get bored with it. They're going to, the people that are used to interaction are going to want interaction because that's normal to them. and when you take that away from them for a while, it can be exciting and new, but they're going to want to go back to what they know and what they're comfortable with. That's just my thing.
Now, do you foresee in the future, let's fast forward, I don't know, a year from now, do you think like people will have on their websites or even us, book a virtual estimate or book an in-person? I mean, are we given choices at this point? Or are we going to try and continue to lean towards that in-person? And I don't know, what do you picture there?
I think, I guess I'm part of the older generation now. And I think that I still prefer the in-person, but I think the option would be nice, but I don't know that I would personally offer it as an option yet, available for selection, more of an option of, when the homeowner says, oh, I can't be there to meet with you. Oh, okay. Then you should take advantage of our virtual appointment, not so much as an option, but more of a plan B, if somebody can't meet with you, and kind of take it in steps as it moves on. Cause there's still something to be said for that in-person appointment. You can get all your measurements from satellite. You can get photographs from the home, from the homeowner. You can get them from Zillow, from realtor.com. You can find photos everywhere, but it's still very easy to miss issues that you may not be able to see in those photos. And let's face it, the homeowner's calling you out there because they don't know what the problem is. So a lot of times you just need to be there to lay eyes on it and talk with them when they're there. So I think it's still very important to have somebody there to go over with. That being said, that it may not be my choice in the future. It's going to be up to what the market dictates, and we just got to do what we've always done. We just got to adapt and adapt and perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also maybe add to that too. It's good to plan for both, right?
Absolutely.
We already know what face-to-face looks like, and just to be ahead of the curve, it's good to have the technology down and the people trained on your team to be able to handle that too. So it's kind of like, it's like we're playing football here. We have to prepare for offense and defense, and we have to do a little bit of both, it seems. So that's good stuff.
That's one of the things too that we've always trained, since I've been here, we train all the new salespeople on. Like you said, you have to offense and defense. You'll get called out to a house and they'll call you for a specific problem, and oh, it's just the front gutter. I've always gotten into the habit of measuring everything and taking notes on everything. And that's come in handy quite a few times with this whole pandemic, where people call up and it's a past customer, and, oh, we did the front gutters on the house. Now they're having a problem with the rear gutter. Well, it's fantastic because when I was there a year ago and we did the front gutter, I actually took all the measurements. I took the notes and I know what's going on back there already. So just being, try to be prepared at all times anyway, always plan going to be another pandemic, and you'll be ready for it if it ever happens again.
Right. Yeah. One of the 7 habits of Stephen Covey, right? Be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So since we're talking about technology, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the technology that we have as a franchise that really helped us be ready for this. So because we answer all the phone calls for all of the locations across the United States, years ago, we ran scenarios of nothing like this, obviously, but what if the power goes out? Oh, crap, we need a backup generator. What if the internet goes down? Oh, we need mobile hotspots then. So all of this stuff that we've pre-worked for years, what was really cool is that we were able to, in an instant, mobilize and have everybody work from home. That obviously is not installing the gutters, but basically sales, the contact center, marketing, admin, immediately was able to work from home. And what was really cool about this is I think it was last year, possibly the year before, we made a switch. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit about when you change something, how quick are people to adapt and embrace change, especially in a franchise. But we went with, I'm probably mislabeling it, but we went with like the professional Microsoft suite, and with our IT guy, basically everybody logs in through this email, and then you have to get an activation number to your cell phone and you make sure authenticate. And it's a little annoying, but what's so amazing is doesn't matter what computer you're on, whether you're at work or home, or you have to go to a friend's house and hop on a computer. As soon as you log in, you've got everything. So I'll tell you, that saved our butts, because as you know, when this thing came came crashing down, it was you basically had a couple days to make some decisions. And if we didn't have that technology in place, oh my gosh, I could not imagine what that would have meant for our franchisees and our clients, for us to not be able to respond. So that was really cool, as well as the voice over IP phones, everything's networked. So just like that. And once we had to mobilize, we did send our staff home. We did give them some of the work computers or stations, and the phones to take home. But yeah, I just thought that was really cool that we were ahead of the curve, because we were worried about snow days. We were worried about power failures and things like that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I always loved. Even when this thing hit, I remember, we were kind of watching as it was starting to, I won't say take hold, but it was starting to affect the West Coast. And I remember we started having conversations, talking to Kevin, getting a hold of me, from marketing, talking to me on a Sunday night with questions. And then literally Monday morning, you and I were talking about it. By Tuesday, there was already plans in place, and it really hadn't affected New York dramatically at that point at all. I mean, there was a handful of cases in New York City, but we had already had plans in place and how we were going to handle this. And thank God we did take that time, because once it hit New York City, it spread unbelievably fast, and fortunately we had stuff in place and we were ready for it the best we could be.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And Ken, you've worked remotely now for what, almost 2 years?
Right.
Tell us what that's like, what technology you're using and stuff.
Well, I'm, basically I can run everything from the business from this right here, my iPhone. Right now I'm on my laptop, but most of the time I'm on my phone. And it's just, basically for my role, it's just communication and just being in front of people, following up. But yeah, I mean, my technology is pretty simple. It's text, call, or email. I would say I do mostly calling and texting. But yeah, it's really come down to, I never imagined when I first started this business, or even 5 years ago, that the gutter business would have so much technology involved in it. It's certainly, it just becomes, is becoming more and more important to having a successful business. And the more that you're, ahead of the curve on all these different things, it definitely makes business easier. But there's definitely sometimes that I really want to take this thing and throw it across the room. Smash it. I call it phone rage. Have you guys ever had phone rage?
Oh yeah. So, Ken, can
I don't break. At least I got it pretty under control after going to phone rage therapy. I haven't broken a phone in several years. But yeah, remember when you used to have the Nextels that used to beep all the time, and those flip phones?
I'm literally laughing right now.
It was just so awesome, the feeling that you would get when you could just take that thing in your hands and just snap it like you're just, break it in half. It was just one of the best feelings in the world. These are, I couldn't imagine this be a little bit tougher to break. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, technology has been very good for me, being able to work remotely, which I never thought would ever been able to happen, especially, starting on a truck. That's how I started as an apprentice 21 years ago. So I think that what I'm seeing is that in the gutter industry, it's going to continue to advance technologically. I think a lot of things are going to happen differently, especially as a result of this. I think this whole COVID thing has definitely catapulted us forward faster when it comes to it. But that's one thing that's really important in business, is that you got to play out these scenarios in your head. And I think that's one thing that we do really well here, is that we plan around everything, marketing, technology, all the things that we've done with our call center, and making it easier for our franchisees to be able to interact seamlessly with their clients and with their employees. And I couldn't imagine if we didn't have all this technology and the things that we have in place and the people that we have in place, business would be pretty miserable. I would think, if I thought of it in a different situation, especially if we were still not using technology and using paper, it would be It would be a mess.
We'd be dead.
And it was a mess. It was a mess 10 years ago when we were doing it. So I can't imagine being in business today and still operating at that kind of level and dealing with that kind of stress. This is much easier to deal with stuff here. And what's cool about technology is that it keeps, even though we're not able to be face-to-face, I feel like in my role, and to answer your question, I've been able to stay very in contact. I mean, me and Danny talk on a very regular basis, and it's like, it's not the same as being there in the same room. And I love that, being able to come back to New York, to corporate, to see everybody. But as far as from a business standpoint, I think that we haven't skipped a beat, or I haven't been skipped a beat when it comes to my role in the company and how I interact with everybody in the team. I feel still works just as well, or maybe even better, with the way things are here. And I think that that's good, because if we can have people be able to work remotely, I think that's just another feather in the cap of being flexible and being able to be able to handle things when problems come up like this. You're able to adapt very quickly when you're ahead of the curve on that.
Absolutely.
That's good. So one more piece of technology I wanted to talk about, and then Danny, we're going to dive a little bit into your sales process. You recently started using a drone on some of your estimates, and while everyone, thinks, holy crap, that's awesome, I'm going to go buy a drone and do that immediately. You found out quickly it is and it isn't as simple as that.
Yeah.
Well, first tell us why you wanted to do it, and then tell us how you had to go about doing it.
Well, we would have our sales meetings every week, and the head of the production department, Joe, would come in and we'd talk about things, and we were finding a lot of the problems with callbacks were stuff that we couldn't see from the ground when we were doing estimates. You wouldn't be able to see, like, there was no drip edge, or if you couldn't tell, there was a section of rotted fascia board. It looked okay from below, but when they got above it, said if you could have saw it from up there, it was really evident. The other thing I love using it for is the homeowner, and we've all had these people, and we're like, oh, no, those trees are nowhere near my house. I won't get any leaves in my gutters, and the tree is 18 feet away from the house, and it's 150 feet tall. So the drone is fantastic for that, because, I can literally hand them my iPad, send the drone up, and show them everything in the gutters, and, their jaw hits the ground like, that's in my gutter? I'm like, yeah, that's the drone right above your house, So I like it for that. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, when we originally talked about it, Ryan, you had the drone and you're like, oh, I have one. This is great. So I'm like, all right, awesome. And I tend to research things to death. So instantly I went online that night and I went, oh, wait a minute. This is not as easy as just going out and sending the drone up over somebody's house. For business, and they're getting to the point where you're going to need it for recreational as well. You need to apply for an FAA license. You need to take a test, and you need to become a licensed FAA. It's a FAA Part 107 pilot for commercial drone. So it was a lot more intense than I thought it was going to be. I figured, we just walk out, throw this thing on the ground, send it up in the air, take some pictures, and we're out of there. It ended up being, I took some classes on it, some flight training. I took some classroom time on it and studied for weeks to take this test. And it is it's an FAA pilot's test. I mean, I had to learn about, airspace around airports and stuff like that, where you can fly, where you can't fly, what the restrictions are. And so many people out there aren't aware of what these restrictions are, but the fines can be tremendous, especially if you're using it in a commercial world without your license. And like I said, there's been a lot of talk about a revised test for basically, just anybody that wants to fly one not commercially. They're going to be required to take some testing at some point too, because these things they're fun, and they're a toy to some degree, but they're not. I mean, they're a toy that can cause a lot of problems if they're not used correctly. And unfortunately, a lot of people can run into Walmart or Best Buy and buy one of these things, and then they see an airplane flying by and they send this thing up there to wave to the pilot. You got to you got to know what the rules are and what you can and what you can't do. And it took a while through that, but it was great. And I'll tell you what, clients love it. You know, when you ask them like, hey, listen, you know, can I send the drone up? They're like, wait, can you do what? You know, so right away, suddenly now they're involved. Now they're right over your shoulder. They're looking at the photos. They're checking everything out. They love it, you know, and it does exactly what we thought it would do. I mean, the very first appointment I took that drone out on, you know, there were some questions about debris in the gutter and heat cable and stuff like that. And literally, I was the third or fourth gutter person there to estimate this, and I was the one that left with the deal, you know.
Wow.
And a lot of that had to do with the fact that, you know, people were saying, well, it could be this or it could be that. I was able to send up the drone and go, all right, it's definitely this, and this is what we're going to do, you know. And that turned into us getting the deal. And it was an older gentleman who was infatuated with the whole visual of it. Come to find out, his son, who was in his, you know, I'd say mid-50s, was there as well, and also flies a drone. So he was kind of overseeing everything, and he was asking a lot of questions. And one of the first questions he asked, he's like, do you have a license to fly this? You know, so there's people are out there, you know, looking into it. So if you are going to use the technology, just do it right. You know, it's definitely.
That's awesome. Now, do you have any idea of how much that fine is? I mean, I know there's a lot of people that would have done exactly what I did. I got a nice drone. It's not, you know, the best in the world, but it's nice. And I would have literally just started doing it.
I don't remember the exact number. I know it was in the thousands, though. It's not like a $200 fine. It was in the thousands if you get caught flying without the license.
Wow.
Awesome. It's pretty easy to get caught because they can track all these drones as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. The drone I use is from DJI, and to actually fly the drone, you have to log in through their system. So they're tracking everything you do. So not only if somebody stops you, if they visually see you doing something wrong, there's a record of everything. You know, if you, for example, if I'm working near an airport, I have an app where I actually have to contact flight control and let them know I'm working the area and see if I can get a clearance to work there. So they'll ask you, okay, what time do you need it for, and what ceiling are you working up to? So you can write back, I'll need it for between 1 and 2 o'clock, and I need a ceiling of 150 feet. They'll give you an instant approval. But if I ask for 150 feet and I go up to 175 feet, now there's a digital record that I went beyond what I was allowed to do legally. So you got to be very careful what you do, you know. And you hear people all the time like, oh, I was just messing around. I just flew over that road for the heck of it. You know, nobody got hurt. Okay, but you broke the law, and it's, you know, they can track that now. It's all in your app.
So I want to talk a little, we've talked a lot about the technology, and then I just really want to talk about how we kind of tie it all in, from everything from the Microsoft suite, the voice over IP phones, digital estimates, drones. So we're going to kind of bring all that in on how we do it. But before we do that, I kind of want to take you down the path of what it used to be like. I mean, it's insane what we went through, but we basically knew we could not franchise this business until we went paperless, and until we simplified our process. So just to give you an idea, and it wasn't that many years ago, but there was a point, I mean, if we go all the way back to the beginning, it's crazy, but let's just say...
No, let's not go there.
Yeah, let's just say in the
writing estimates on a piece of cardboard you ripped off a downspout box is really not good reflection of who we are today.
Yeah. He was the guy that would give the person a price on the back of a business card in the beginning. But everything evolved. And then eventually it went up to one of those carbon copy forms that you get at Staples, and then so on and so on. But what we did when we were actually a good company, like we had a process, somebody would call up, and we would literally put the estimate on Google Calendar, all right? And then we would have to put the client in QuickBooks. And then I believe we also had to put them in another CRM because they didn't talk to each other. And then we had an editable PDF because we were, you know, or a PDF that we would print of where we would draw our diagram. We had 4 points of data entry from the first client phone call. And the sales team used to have to come to the office every single day to pick up their paperwork. They'd go to their box, and it would say Monday's estimates, and they'd grab them and they'd put them on their clipboard, and then they'd have to go out, measure, put it on that piece of paper, write a contract, give the customer the carbon copy, and then go do the rest of their appointments. And then they'd have to bring them back and say, so when they brought back their estimates, somebody in the office had to now enter in all the data into those couple programs. It was a huge undertaking, but it was a good process for the client. They didn't know all that. They called, they got an estimate. The only problem was, and Danny, you would hate this. Imagine that you have some days you have what? Anywhere between 6 and 10 estimates to do. Imagine that if on Monday, every day you'd have to come back to the office, but also, let's just say you leave the house and someone said, I got to think about it. And then they didn't want to think about it. They said, you know what? I like Danny. He's amazing. And they call up the office and said, I'm ready to go ahead. Do you know that we couldn't book that work until we got the paperwork back? And sometimes it would be days before a solutionist could get back to the office and submit their paperwork. So we'd literally have to tell a client, all right, yep, I know he was out there yesterday or the day before. He just hasn't been able to come back yet. As soon as we have your paperwork, we can process all of this. It was insane. So that was just a little bit of a taste of when it was actually good. And kind of we went back to when it was, awesome. But all right, so Danny, kind of what's our process? Focus on the technology. What's our process now?
Well, I mean, the technology side of it is we're using tablets now, so you're going out there, you're photographing everything, you're getting your measurements, we're entering everything into the tablets to the CRM. And it cleans everything up. It gives them an instant estimate. I mean, a lot of times they have the estimate in their email before you go back to the door to talk about it with them. So everything is much, it's instant. It's right then and there, it's done. As far as technology too, I love the technology as far as for commercial work too. You can do a lot of that stuff remotely now. So it's really the way you used to do things. It just kind of dragged on, whereas now everything's much quicker, much more focused. It's cleaned up tremendously, and it just puts us on another playing field because a lot of our competitors are still doing it the way they're just getting to the point where you guys were, when you moved away from the cardboard box and into the, the receipts from Staples.
Yeah.
So it definitely, like I said, it cleans it up, makes it a lot easier on the salespeople, on the office, and on the customer as well.
And how cool that when you have a, let's just say your job's getting produced today that you looked at 3 months ago and the guys call up, and they're like, I don't understand what he wants us to do here. What does that look like?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I can literally just jump back in again, because I'll get calls on stuff where they'll have a question. And after the first probably 3 months, everything became a blur as far as clients, In the first 3 months, I could remember off the top of my head, oh, Mrs. Smith, yeah, she was the one with the red gutters, the downspouts moving over. Yeah, that's gone. Now it's just all one big blur. So typically, though, when you jump back into your estimate, you see all your photos, you see your notes, you see your diagrams, and you can help the crew instantly. It literally it's just a matter of logging into the CRM and finding who the client was, looking it up, looking at the photographs, and going over it with the crew on site. And it's quick, very quick.
That's awesome. So there's a lot of people. I remember back when the iPads came out, everybody felt like if they could get an iPad for business, their problems would be solved. And what I found is that didn't solve the problem. It actually made it worse if you didn't know how to use it. So it basically, we just made a digital mess instead of a paper mess because now we had an iPad. So now we had pictures saved over here. The pictures were on the iPad that we had to now email ourselves or the client because the actual bid was still on a piece of paper. And then before you know it, we've got pictures somewhere. We've got, the contract somewhere else. We were very much ahead of that curve. We knew getting iPads didn't solve it. It was the right piece of software. So for any of you guys that are looking for the right piece of software, you want everything in the same place. You don't want to have pictures over here and the scope of the work over here and the diagram over there. You want to be able to have something that's all in one spot that everybody can see. So that you're not making a digital mess. There's nothing worse than that, having it everywhere. I'd rather have a paperwork mess. At least I can organize that. So, all right, so that's awesome. And then basically the biggest change, during this crisis has been what? Just, getting the photos from the client and then basically trying to have a Zoom or like some sort of calling back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. We're trying to work as much as we can remotely just due to there's a lot of gray area in what we're seeing with New York State's laws and what they passed. So we're trying to do the right thing, trying to work as remote as possible. One of the biggest issues is when you're trying to get trying to get photos, especially from the clients, you don't always get them quick. I talked to Mario, one of the other salespeople here, and he's like, yeah, he goes, I'm calling people now, not so much for follow-up. I'm calling for follow-up to get photos. I'm not calling to close deals. I'm calling so I can finish the estimate now. So we're using some technology, like I said, whenever we can. We're using satellite mapping to measure houses, and we're jumping on different websites to see if we can find photos of the houses, but a lot of times they're just not available. So you're relying on the client to text you or to email you. And, unfortunately, sometimes when you hit older clients, they're like, well, I don't really know how to do that. Well, you use your phone and, all right, well, when I go outside with my phone, what number do I dial? No, you take a picture. It's not always as clear cut with the older generation. At times it can be a little bit of a struggle.
Do you feel, Danny, that the response time is even more important now than it ever has been? Because it seems to me, especially this is how I operate, when something's wrong and is happening to me, right, which gutters happen to people. They don't just wake up and decide, oh, I want to get some new gutters today. It happens to be that there's some pain involved and they're calling on their device. And I don't know, but I feel like because of these things, I feel like I want answers now. And if I don't get answers now, I'm going to the next phone number, the next website, the next review. Who's going to pick up my phone? Do you feel that response time when it comes to somebody, especially like what you're talking about with pictures, having a hard time getting pictures? Maybe if we're responding faster, maybe that person's already outside and looking or noticing that there's something wrong and they have their phone. And if we respond fast enough, do you think that plays a role into making things smoother? The response time now is more important than ever, or do you feel that really hasn't changed much?
No, I feel you're 100% right. And what I've noticed is during this whole COVID pandemic, what we're seeing is people are calling in, and if you can get on the phone with them quickly and work with them quickly, a lot of them are closing quickly. They want instant gratification. So if you're calling in and you're talking to them, you're getting your measurements from a satellite while you're on the phone with them. You're talking, they're texting you photos. You could put all this together, then sit down, spend some time putting the estimate together and call them back. It's top of mind. It's what they're working on right now. They're thinking about it right now. They're going to take care of it right now. You got back to them quick. You gave them everything they needed. You discussed what their problem is. You gave them a solution. They're ready to go. The longer you wait, the more chance they have to find another problem that might be more important to them than their gutter. So if you can get to them while that gutter is the most important thing on their mind, you got a better shot at closing it right then and there before they notice that their water heater is leaking or their dishwasher's not working.
So you think that the technology that we have in place, plus would you say that the call center that we have, that's a big differentiator? I mean, I don't think there's any other competitors in your territory that actually have somebody answering their phones unless they have a phone service after hours or whatever. But do you feel that your response time is, because of the call center, is super, fast compared to what you're hearing out there from your clients and what other competitors are doing or not doing?
Absolutely. That's the nice thing with the call center is when they call up, they're getting somebody on the phone. They're talking to a real person and they're able to describe what's going on. They're not getting somebody's voicemail. They're not leaving a message. They're not listening to the phone ring 100 times and nobody answering. You're getting somebody right here, right now that's going to take care of this for you. And that makes a huge difference because, like I said, attention spans can be short, especially when, you have a lot of stuff to do at the house and, maybe they call and leave a message for their gutters and it takes a day or two for somebody to get back to them. But in the meantime, that front window that was broken or the garage door opener that wasn't working, that person answered the phone. Guess who just got the expendable money they had that week? Not you.
That's a great point. So our competition is not always our competitors. Our competition is whatever project just trumped the importance of the one that we were thinking we wanted.
Yeah.
Right.
And here, the moral of the story is we all have access to the same technology. That same guy might have the latest iPhone, but he didn't clear his messages. And then the other person might answer every phone call. So it's not about having an iPad. It's not about having the latest phone or even really good software for your company. It's about utilizing it, and it's about solving problems for your clients quick. I'm somebody that I'm very tech savvy. If I get on the phone with a plumber and he said, hey, listen, if you're able to send me 4 pictures from left, right, and center, I can get you a quote very quickly. I'm like, done. Where somebody else might be like, yeah, can you just come out? Okay, done. Either one, done. And I do think that we have to be ready for both. I think especially coming out of this COVID, that people are not going to necessarily want to meet right away. That, some people have lost people or gotten sick themselves or just really scared of, so I think having these options moving forward, being a tech-focused or tech-first company. We used to say we were like a marketing-first company, but we really are a tech-first company. The technology, and Ken, I think, said this years ago, was, whenever you can invest in something, technology is always something you should invest in, always. But future-proofing, what does that mean? And being a franchise, I think that's one of the biggest things that we take very seriously, is how do we future-proof this thing? And everything that we've talked about, I mean, we're able to do a franchise wide update. When we moved from hosting our own email on our own website to moving it to the Exchange server through Microsoft, guess what? It was a pain in the butt. And we had to figure all that out. We had to work with the IT, and then we had to work with our franchisees to then get them to reconfigure their email and move over to this new one. It's a pain in the butt, but guess what? It was worth it, sitting where we are now, especially among a pandemic. So what I noticed early on, and Ken and I noticed when we first franchised in 2015, we were going to all these franchise shows, and these were seminar-based shows. You pay money and you go and you hear on how to improve your business and franchise support and all that stuff. And what was really alarming to us at first was that we're sitting at a table with, whether they're service-based or whatever, and they might have had 200, 300, 1,000 units or locations or franchises. And what was kind of crazy was they were talking about how they were having a hard time getting reports from their franchisees. They weren't submitting them. They were still using paper-based things. And Ken and I felt really cool about ourselves for a second, where we're like, oh my gosh, we're completely paperless and we're digital, and man, we can see everything in real time. But it kind of hit us a little bit later. It's like, it's not because they don't want to. I mean, imagine if we were in business for 50 years, or we went back down to 1999 when Ken started. If we had 100 franchises then, I cannot imagine what it would be like to be constantly changing and getting every single person to move with the next iteration of technology. So I had a newfound respect for the companies that have to go over that technology hurdle and get their franchisees system-wide to embrace it. But what I can say is being a young franchise and emerging and having that stuff figured out beforehand, it has really given us a leg up. That since we are all on a platform, that if and when we want to just change our CRM, that's going to be pretty easy. We're converting it from one database. We already have all the info. It's just data that's got to get sent to a new thing. And obviously we got to learn it. But I would say that has been really huge for us in this, is being kind of technology first. We have a foundation in technology. So as we grow, it's easy to continue to plug and play.
Technology is here to stay, and we live in the age of information, and things are happening so fast that when you have that established, especially in a franchise system, what's so awesome about having a franchisor as a true backer of your company is that that's their job. That's our job. Our job is to navigate those things so that we can make the call center better, so that Danny, can you imagine if you had to answer your phone and schedule all the estimates that came in all the time for your schedule and book them and figure that out and route it and do all that stuff? I mean, I don't think you'd be able to do as many estimates as you do. And it would just be, you'd have to hire probably a personal secretary to do it for you. If you were to do the volume of sales that you've done in past years, I mean, it's pretty amazing what you guys have accomplished selling just gutters. But what do you think, Danny?
It's huge. The fact that you have a whole team behind you, is massive. To try to go out and do what we do as a team, as one person, you can't do it. It just cannot be done. There's no way you could keep up with it. I mean, maybe if you tried, you'd get a week or two before you jumped off a bridge. But I just couldn't fathom the idea of trying to keep everything organized, and you know, it's the volume alone you just wouldn't be able to maintain. And you know, if you want to hit the numbers that we're shooting to hit, you know, you're not doing that as a one-man team. You need a whole team of people behind you to even get close to the numbers that we're shooting for and getting.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I saw on a feed that I'm a part of on Facebook in a group of gutter guys, and one guy said, "Oh, nobody can sell better than an owner." And I was like,
I wanted to comment on that.
man, that guy is so wrong, because a true salesperson, you know, if an owner is wearing all these other hats of scheduling the estimates, answering the phone when it rings, doing the jobs, making sure the guys have everything they have, loading trucks, ordering material, and the list goes on and on and on. And I don't need to list it all, but it's a lot. You know, It's a lot. And I know, because I did it. I did it for 10, 11 years myself, doing all those things. And then marketing and all the other things. That list goes on. You know, it's a huge undertaking, and being able to scale a business, if that's what a person's goal is, to scale your business and to be able to create more opportunity and get to multiple trucks and things of that nature. There's no way that you can sell better than somebody like you, Danny. I could never sell as much as you, because my brain is in so many different places, you know. I mean, you know, back when I was doing it that way, I mean, somebody who's a professional salesperson, I never followed up like you guys did. I didn't even know what a next step agreement was. You know, I never did all those things. And plus the technology wasn't there either. You know, can you speak a little bit to that? You know, I guess it can work for somebody. It just depends on what they want with their business. But, you know, I really feel that if somebody wants to grow their business and is an owner of a business, that's one of the tool belts that you need to drop off very quickly, because sales guys can run circles around owners.
Yeah, I mean, I think I get what the guy was saying, as far as, you know, nobody's gonna pitch your company like you, because nobody knows it like you. But the problem with that is volume. You know, you're so limited to what you can get to, that you know, on that side, he has no argument. You know, no disrespect to the guy, I'm not even sure who it is, but you just can't be expected to hit large numbers. And you know, if he's okay with where he's at with the, you know, whatever his yearly number is, that's great for him. But if he's looking to grow, he's not going to do it on his own. He's going to need people. And, you know, one of the first things I think you need is a salesperson, you know, somebody that's dedicated to go out there and focus on it. And, you know, a lot of times the sales, if you don't get them on the spot, it just requires a little bit of nudging. So think about all the times where, you know, these owners have just dropped the ball. Like, you know what, that guy didn't close. He's not going anywhere. I can't tell you how many times I've called people back, even though I didn't want to, because in the back of my head, it was, this isn't going to end up going anywhere anyway, you know. And then you call the person back and they're like, oh yeah, you know, I'm ready to go, but I think I need to add this, this, and this to it now. So now that client that you were willing to walk away from because you're pretty sure it wasn't going anywhere, you just did your job, did your follow-up, and suddenly now, you know, an $800 job is a $3,500 job because they need more from it, you know. So that's where the salesperson is going to come in. That's their job, is to follow up.
And usually owners don't have that time that you just said. You know, we're thinking about the next estimate, the next job, the next thing I got to do, and I got to get this thing done. So I can't really put a bond and rapport and put all those little nice little bells and whistles and things that you're able to promote value, right? There's just no time to promote value. So, yeah.
We have the data. I mean, having 12 locations and a mix of owners that sell and salespeople, it definitely runs the gamut. I can't say that the salespeople always outsell the owner. I mean, obviously everyone makes, you know, different decisions and they have different salespeople, but overall, the owners that get out of selling, typically once they get the right salesperson, I can't tell you that any salesperson, but once you get the right person, they absolutely destroy what the owners were able to do.
Danny, I mean, you rose to the top very quickly. I mean, one of your best years, you sold over 1.6 million, right? So,
yeah. Honest,
Tell us about that. I could never. I know. I've been doing this business for 21 years, been in construction my whole life. I don't think I could ever do that unless I was totally like in a position to focus on sales 100% of the time. It's a huge accomplishment, and tell us about that.
that honestly, that's not my accomplishment. That's the team's accomplishment. It's not, I could never take credit for that solely because I couldn't have done it solely. I always tell people all the time, I'm not a salesperson. I was never really a salesperson. I was a musician, Ken and I met through that, and he brought me on board here. And to be honest with you, I really had no interest at first until I came in and met everybody and saw what this was all about. And it's a team. It's not a lone wolf operation. There's no way you could hit those numbers without a full support team behind you. And to be honest with you, it didn't feel like work. Things just fell into place. Everybody was firing on all cylinders. Everything was dialed in and working the way it should be. And it just, that 1.6 million was never on my radar. That wasn't the goal. It wasn't about hitting a number and breaking a number. It was just doing what we do every day, and and the team all working together. And then I remember getting a phone call. I think Ken called me, and he's like, "Hey, you're going to hit that goal this year, aren't you?" And I honestly, I had no idea how far along I was because we were in the peak of our busy season. And, I'm embarrassed to say I might not have been looking at my tracker as much as I should have because I was following up and chasing stuff. But, yeah, I just remember looking at it going, oh, wow, that's within reach, and like I said, it didn't feel like work because the team is there, the systems are in place, and the machine, when it's working the way it works here, it doesn't feel like work. It just happens.
Wow. No, that's awesome. And you just kind of, you made me remember a bunch of technology. We didn't even highlight the amount of technology that we have in marketing, to be able to produce those leads. It's just enormous amount of stuff and time and technology and programs that we have to be able to get the work for the people in the call center, to put the work on your calendar for you to get it done, to get to the guys. It's absolutely amazing. But as we wind down here, I definitely want to, if you're a business owner, it is your job to stay ahead of the curve. And if you own a franchise, it is more than ever your job. You have to be staying ahead of the curve because your franchisees or people are going to be begging for it, saying, what about this? There's programs that do that. Why are we doing it this way? You don't necessarily want that pressure. You want to be the one that's ahead of the curve. And Ken and I have been really good at that. I mean, couple highlights. We were the first ones. I mean, if anyone's been in business long enough, the day of the yellow pages was awesome. There used to be one way for people to find work. You'd go into the yellow pages and you'd open it up and you'd go to G and you'd find gutters. And then, it was a battle for the ad space, a half page, full color. No, just do a 3/4. They add better. Right side of the page, left side of the page. Holy cow. But you know what? That's what we had to do. And we were awesome at it. We started designing really good ads. We started to change it, and we started to really take a huge part of the market share. But we were the first ones to notice that it was going to go digital very soon. And the cost to acquire a client through the yellow pages was getting very costly. So we were the first ones to not only have a website, but to learn SEO. I learned how to do SEO and SEM and built the freaking website in the beginning. And not to toot my own horn, but that's what it took. And if I didn't have a partner like Ken in the beginning, where he was out basically doing the work while I could think and put my head around that kind of stuff, we were able to get ahead of our competition. And I remember clear as day pulling out of the yellow pages, and it was dying. It wasn't like we saw it 2 years ahead of time. We just noticed less and less. They want more and more money, and our competition keeps going bigger with their ads, and we were like going smaller. Finally, we just pulled out, and we crushed it on the internet. We were literally 10 years ahead of them by the time they figured out that it wasn't in the yellow pages anymore. So all of that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, we don't want to be Blockbuster, and if you're listening to this and you're like, what's Blockbuster? That's even better. But you don't want to be left in the dust. People are asking for it. You have to look at what's happening. People are already saying, I don't really want to meet with you. Like, can't you just do an estimate over the phone? You've done how many you've been in business since 1999, and they're right. Ken, me, you, we could look at a house from the driveway and guess within probably a couple $100 how much the project will be, but we don't want to commoditize our business that much. But if that's what they're asking for, we can't stay in and say, you know what? I only do estimates when there's 2 people there. We still have people that do that. They want both decision makers, and they're going to do this high pressure sale and make them watch a DVD while they're measuring. Guess what? People have been moving away from that for a long time. You have to be listening to what people want, and then you want to be able to react so that we can provide the service they want, still continue to give the value that we want as a company, and basically change with the times so that we are in business in a few years. Because guess what? Some of these young bucks coming up, they're nimble. They're nimble. They don't have a huge company. They don't have to convince 10, 12 other people to do something. It's also just as tough, but you could be left in the dust if, I remember, I'm sorry, I'm going on and on, but I got a little bit passionate here. I know so many people that are out of work. They were contractors for 10, 15 years, and they would brag. I never advertised. The only advertising I ever did was these pens. I don't have to. All mine's word of mouth. And when the word of mouth dried up with the internet, and they were literally out of business. I know people that are not even in the trades anymore that were very successful business owners, but they did not see the writing on the wall. Like we discussed earlier, their heads were too close to the business where they were doing the sales, the install, that they couldn't see it changing around them. And then when it dried up, they're like, I need to get a website. And then clear as day, we could probably do a whole nother thing, but basically we have to stay ahead of the curve. We rely on people like you, Danny, our clients. Everyone is telling us where it's going. We just have to listen and do it.
It's very hard to survive something like this or some of the things that we've went through without a team. And I think that's the biggest thing that I love about what we're doing and how we're changing the industry is that, you know what, it's not about me. It's not about Ryan. It's about guys like Danny and other people that are on our team and other franchisees that are passionate about gutters and wanting to make a difference in the industry. And I think that's something that, makes it easier for guys who might be struggling is that, hey, there is something out here that can help you. And we could all put our heads together on this. And, that's one way when something like this can happen, we can, instead of it happening to us and us having to go on the defense or on the offense, we have somebody that's already done that kind of work and legwork for us. Or we have a group of people or team members that are professionals in different areas of the business. We have professional marketing people. And there's professionals within that there's professional sales guys and professional business strategists on our team, professional people that are trained to answer phones. And that's what they do every day. And they love it. Yeah. That's the difference between, I could never go back to being an installer, owner, operator, installer after knowing what I know now, because it can be a lonely place when something like a pandemic happens or a great recession happens or the .com .bomb happens. All these things have happened within our lifetime. Yep. And having a team is really what helps you to survive these things and come out better for it on the other side, because you're all helping each other. And I really think that that's something that's super important right now, even though we're social distancing and pretty much quarantining. I think teamwork is more important than ever. And you don't have to be out there alone. You don't have to do these things alone. There's plenty of people, imagine having your own spot where you can call a guy like Danny who's sold $1 million, in revenue many times over through his career here with Brothers Gutters, and be able to talk to that person, or not even you talk to him, but you be able to have your sales rep be able to talk to somebody like him on a regular basis and associate with that person. I mean, how awesome is the power and leverage of that kind of knowledge right there? And that's really what it is. It really helps us to close these knowledge gaps that we have in our industry. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it happening. I'm seeing it on the forums and social media.
Yep.
I'm seeing guys that really care, which is great. And it's encouraging to see. But imagine what we could do if we could really join forces together.
Yep.
The opportunity is amazing. I can't even list all the different things that we could do.
It's true. And it is Franchise Friday, so we do talk a little bit more in depth on the franchise, the opportunity. And we love the idea of guys that are in the business converting to a Brothers That Just Do Gutters franchise for basically all the reasons that we listed in this podcast today. And I love the analogy our business coach gave us recently. If you're looking at your business and let's say you're on the beach and your job is installing and doing everything, you're literally on the beach. You're in it. You're like building the sandcastle. You can't see very far. But then a little bit further back, you have people that are on the beach that they might just be sitting there and they can look, they can see the water, they can see, the sand, and they might be able to see a shark or something that's a little bit further out that you can't see. And then what's really cool is you got the lifeguard, that you got the lifeguard that's the highest up that he can see the furthest. And I feel like we're at that place in the franchise and even a little bit higher, where we can see maybe the geography or the whole, the tsunami that's coming in from farther away that's not going to affect that beach for a couple days. So that's what it's all about, is how far can you see in your business? And the more involved you are in it, the less you can see. So I think that's one of the biggest advantages of joining the Brothers That Just Do Gutters, or even any franchise, is that they've done a lot of that stuff. They've already figured out the best way to build a sandcastle or whatever it is. And now it's all about not letting things happen to you and not playing defense all the time, but strategizing that offense. So our biggest goal is to help people to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour as quickly as possible. And we've already seen it. We've seen some of our franchisees do in their first 1 to 5 years, took us 15. And we didn't even do it as profitably as they've been doing it. So that's what's been unbelievable, is Ken and I had to bang our head against the wall for years. Danny, you had to bang your head against the wall for a few years as we're still evolving, and now the collective of all of us doing this over and over, when somebody signs up day one, holy cow, they're getting to where we were in 10, 15 years in a year or two.
And that's the cool thing about franchising. Franchising is you have somebody that is like frustrated, and because all this things keeps popping up and blowing up in my face, like a pandemic, COVID-19, or a broken down truck, or a crashed gutter machine, or I can't keep up with the phone calls, or I'm just not getting the marketing right. I'm not getting out to my target audience, or whatever it is. All these minds keep blowing up in my face, and being self-employed really sucks. I feel stuck and I feel burnt out. How do I get around those things? Well, you gotta look at the situation and play the tape forward and then reverse it. When we have our tool belt on, like Ryan said, I only can see the sandcastle right in front of my face and what I'm doing right here, the gutters that are right in front of my face. But when this stuff happens and hits the fan, it's like our whole world is shattered and we're not prepared for it. Or if I fall, I'm not prepared for it. I don't go out on my truck and put up my ladder and think that I'm going to fall today, but it can happen. And what if these what ifs happen and you don't have a team? You're pretty screwed. And that's what it comes down to, is really being a good steward and being a good planner and making sure that, I got to really put these thoughts down on paper and start to really align myself with something that is not just like so myopic. I really have to think of all these other things of the what ifs scenarios and play that tape backwards and forwards and over again, and then work towards getting to a place where I have less risk.
It's utilizing technology, having it make your business simpler, never more complicated. If technology is going to make it harder, it's not the right technology. So make it simple, utilize technology, build an amazing team. That's all we got for you today. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you implement at least 1 or 2 nuggets from this episode that will give you the confidence to grow. Subscribe to our podcast to stay updated and grow with the bros.